Real quick before this video starts, I just wanted to apologize because I accidentally streamed this recording, and some of you saw, a couple hundred of you saw, and it was kind of embarrassing. So basically in OBS, when I'm streaming, it automatically records, and also the recording and streaming button are like right next to each other. So like I just blindly clicked one and I thought it was the record button, but it was the stream button. So it did actually record still, because streaming always records in OBS, at least if you set it up that way, but it also streamed to a lot of people. Sorry if you saw that, it's kind of embarrassing, but without further ado, this is the deck profile from YCS Fort Worth. What is up, guys? Dzeeff here, and today we have a new type of deck profile, including the face cam. You know, I've really been trying to integrate the face cam into more and more videos. I've gotten a ton of positive feedback, and the deck profile setup is a little bit janky right now, but it's fine. It kind of looks like there's just like a big light going up to my face, sort of like that scene in Pulp Fiction when they open the briefcase. But overall, I think it's fine. And you guys probably know what this is about, but this is about my YCS Fort Worth Altergeists deck profile, which I've dubbed Altergeists Endgame. And I thought that by doing this, I wouldn't have to you guys wouldn't just have to stare at cards while I talk about the tournament and stuff like that. I do want to say that this was like the most fun I've ever had at a YCS, period. You know, I didn't do super great. I did all right. I took some liberties with this deck profile, or with this deck list, and maybe they weren't all great, but I felt like overall pretty solid list. Obviously, we now have a new format, so that's going to change a lot of it, but I just felt, I don't know, it's been a journey. You know, I call this Endgame because I feel like this past format has been so crazy. My most successful format ever, in fact, just because you know, I got the UDS top and the YCS top, and I did pretty good at some other events. I didn't quite get that third top though, but we'll have to wait and see what happens this coming format. This is kind of like the final installment of this Altergeists list in this particular format. I feel like it's pretty solid. So anyway, let's take a look at the profile. So first off, we're obviously playing 3 copies of Marionetter, no surprises there. 3 copies of Mulseek, once again, no surprises. 2 copies of Silk, 1 copy of Multifaker, of course, and 1 copy of Concrete. I do want to mention here a big shout out to Vlad. You gave me some of these European prints. So these are European Concretes and Silks, and I wish I could have gotten more, but he didn't have a full playset of the other cards that I needed, but still look pretty cool. They look a little bit darker. If you guys don't know, the European prints, even the ones that are in English, which are like these ones are, they're still a lot darker, so it's pretty neat. And have a sort of different style to some of the card artworks. And then we have 3 copies of Ash Blossom, and one of the liberties that I took with this deck list is that I played 3 copies of Nibiru in the main. I saw the guy at YCS Niagara doing this at top of the Altergeists, and I thought I'd give it a shot. Honestly, it was really terrible. I think if I would have redone the event and faced some different matchups, it would have been fine, but at this particular event, I played not a lot of combo decks, and when I didn't even draw this card game 1, so really lackluster. I know that the 2 striker opponents that I played against, one of which I lost to, I opened 2 copies of this card going first in game 1, or going second game, I can't remember, but in game 1, drawing 2 copies of this completely blank card, and the first one didn't matter as much, but the second one, it mattered a ton, just because the guy needed extra cards. I was like one interruption away from like winning that game 1, and it would have been really good to not draw 2 copies of Nibiru. There was even one game against Mystic Mine where I opened all 3 copies of Nibiru on the first turn after resolving Pot of Extravagance, and luckily I won that game because Mystic Mine is a really bad Altergeist matchup because you can keep getting down to 0 monsters with the spoofing. I think if I would have played less copies of this card, maybe I would have played more combo decks, and it's like, oh man, I wish I had the Nibiru. And I think in theory, if you're going to a YCS where a lot of combo decks are expected, this card is perfectly fine. You know, a lot of people won't see it coming. The games that I drew at game 1 against like combo decks, like when I played against Pure Thunder, which isn't quite a combo deck, but I mean it summons 5 times, it was good, it was solid. It is a little tricky to play sometimes. After turn 1, I was having some difficulties with that. I was having some difficulties the last couple events with this card. It's really hard to just like withhold yourself and not play the Multifaker just so you can Nibiru your opponent, but overall it is the right play, and yeah, it's fine. But that was my monster lineup. I should mention that the day did not start off well. I started off by losing to Super Poly game 1 against that Pure Thunder Dragon opponent because he Super Poly'd the Multifaker and the Link Rebo, which are both dark monsters, and I instantly lost. And it might sound crazy, but it's actually the second time it's happened at an event like this, so that really sucks. I lost to a Green Maju player I guess, I guess I managed to win that one, but I still got super played in game 1, and it almost cost me the game, almost cost me the match as well, but it's fine. But anyway, let's take a look at the rest. We have 3 copies of Extravagance, 2 copies of Duality, not 3 copies of Duality, 2 copies of Duality. I just want to play the most amount of games, and I feel like the way to play the most amount of games is by playing 2 copies of Duality. It digs for everything, right? If you have all traps, it digs to a monster. If you have all monsters, it digs to a trap. Just overall the most middle ground card you can use. Maybe now that the format looks to be not so Orcus prevalent, maybe 1-for-1 is a good card again. One of the problems is that you need to have cards in your deck list that are good going second against the Orcus Crescendo, and now that might be happening less often, even if Orcus are in the metagame, won't be as consistent, so maybe I can play 1-for-1 again. That card is just really risky because they would always end a Crescendo, and they'd always have that negation to stop the 1-for-1. For the trap cards, of which there are a lot of them, we have 3 copies of Spoofing, 2 copies of Protocol, 1 copy of Manifestation, the standard Altergeists lineup that you guys are probably pretty familiar with at this point. I mean, at least I would assume you would be if you've watched some of these other profiles. 3 copies of Strike, 3 copies of Judgment, and basically the reason to play the deck, and then 1 copy of Solemn Warning. Yeah, I kept in the Warning. I played this at YCS Niagara, and it worked pretty well. It's good in the mirror matches, which I haven't played. I still have not played a mirror match since this deck got hit, which is really cool because I hate playing the mirror match. It's super awkward. A lot of times, like, if both of you draw broken, it's pretty fun, or if neither of you draw broken, it's pretty fun, but if, like, one person opens a spoofing, the other one doesn't, it's just, like, game over. So I don't really like playing the mirror match too much, although I do have a pretty positive win rate against it. It's just, it's too much is up to chance, which is not how I like to play Yu-Gi-Oh! I like just having skill-intensive things, but when you're both playing the same deck, and there's so many, like, really powerful cards, if one player opens them and one player doesn't, it's just game over. But anyway, we have the 1 copy of Warning there. Good against the control matchups, just good in general. Like, the best hands in this deck are when you open, like, a couple Altergeist cards and then as many, like, really impactful trap cards, and these Solemns, even including Warning, are, like, the most impactful trap cards you can play. 3 copies of Infinite Permanence. You guys keep wanting to know. No one actually wants to know. But anyway, I will keep a track record here. I opened the Impermanence with Multi-Faker 1 time in the tournament, and it was going second, and it was a complete blowout. Super, super solid. I used Impermanence and, like, started a continuous combo, and I was like, hold on, I have a Multi-Faker that I want to summon, and that was obviously really, really strong. I did manage to win that game. And we have 2 copies of Compulse, 1 copy of Order for, this was just like an auto-winning against a lot of decks when you go first, but the Compulses are just in there because they're so strong against the Orcus deck. When you go second, you force the Crescendo. That's, like, the important part here is that you force it because you have to Compulse, you target the Link monster, and one time the guy let it through, and then he lost, because then, like, I think he thought that he could put more monsters on board and summon another Galatea, but I just was able to stop all of his cards. He had no interruptions, so that was really strong. Is it worth playing Compulse going forward? That's a hard question. I'm not sure if I have the answer for it. The balance has only been up like a couple hours. I'm not so sure though if it actually is, like, necessary. It's still a really solid card, don't get me wrong, but I think that I don't know, other options might be better, and I would like to play Crackdown and Lost Twin again as well. I like those cards a lot. Crackdown has always lost to Twin Disters, and Lost Twin just wasn't as good because it wasn't good at breaking an Orcus board going second, which you need to have with this deck. For the extra deck, 3 copies of Hexia, 3 copies of Link Rebo. I guess I don't know if I'm just gonna stop making this card game 1, but now that I've lost now that I've gotten super polyed 2 different game 1s by summoning Link Rebo and searching Faker, it makes me want to not. It really makes me want to not summon this card like game 1 ever, because they'll slide out the super poly, but when you go first, like, or in game 1 at least, like, if they're maining it, like, they're gonna have it in there. They're gonna have a starting Venom, and it just it definitely keeps coming up now where it's like I really just don't want to lose that anymore. So I guess I'm just gonna make the All Mirage turn 1. I don't know. No one else I feel is mentioning that because it's like such a odd situation to have happen, and maybe some opponents might not even know that you can do it, but it is definitely has lost me a couple games now, or at least made some games really difficult. So 2 All Mirage, 1 Cerberus to out the Nibiru token, which I still feels pretty important, 1 Phoenix, and 1 Prime Banshee. Those are all the Link monsters, pretty much the standard Link monsters. I think the exact same lineup that I played at Niagara, maybe minus 1 card. The last 4 cards are 2 Mega Fleet, 2 Fortress Dragon. This seems really funny in hindsight because, like, almost none of these decks topped. There weren't a lot of Cyber Orcus players, but it was very popular the previous event, and these are just, like, free cards you can put in that give you, like, a free super poly against, like, one of the best decks that I felt in the format. And I mean, they did top, and they were at the top tables and stuff, but because it's, like, the extra deck in the deck doesn't really matter, and because I wasn't playing super poly, I really felt that because I had, like, the 4 extra spots, there's no reason not to just play these cards because they're just so free when they resolve. It's really, really solid. For the side deck, I figured since I was traveling with Farfa, I had to make a side deck you couldn't laugh at, and this is the first side deck I've played in a while that is all 3 ofs. I usually just play some 3 ofs and some 2 ofs, maybe a couple 1 ofs. At the last event, Niagara actually was going to play all three of those, but I changed it last minute, and that was fine. But this one, once again, it is another event where I just completely disrespect any of the mirror matches, any of the control matchups, and I mean, it's fine, like, in general. I didn't play any, like, back row decks or whatever, just a lot of Striker and a lot of Orcus players, a couple rogue decks, but overall, it did fine. It did fine. I'm not going to say it did fantastic, I didn't top, but it's okay. And then we have so the first thing we have 3 Artifact Lancia, 3 copies of Gnome. Funny story about these. Shout out to Alejandro, I think he's the person that gave me these. He said to shout him out in the deck profile. I don't know if he's watching or what. I don't even know if he knew who I was, so it's just totally fine. But basically, I was looking for Gnomes all Friday. None of the vendors had them. None of my friends had them. Really, like, no one had them. And I posted on Zodiac Duelist a couple times asking for them. So did Farfa. And eventually, someone replied at like 11:30 at night on Friday. And he had some Gnomes, and his hotel was like pretty close to mine, like 5 minutes walking, and I was like, hey man, can you just like sell these to me and I'll meet you at your hotel or whatever? And he was like, sure. So we met up at like midnight. Super like a weird situation, but it totally went good. So I managed to get these Gnomes, and then when I played against Lunar Light Orcus, I didn't manage to draw them, but if I did, it would have been really strong. Really good card. We'll have to see if this card is still getting played though. Obviously it doesn't really work against like any Orcus deck anymore because they don't make Mermaid, and that was like the big part where you made this card. And I don't know if Lunar Lights are even going to be like around anymore, so we'll have to wait and see. But if Lunar Lights is still around, and if there's still somebody as a thought, then this card's really strong. And it was very strong in this event as well. 3 copies of Village for Striker. I don't know, it's like a good card. Obviously I lost to Striker. That was like the last round of day 1 or whatever, but it's still like a card you need to play. I think even with Widow Anchor at 1, it'll still be a deck that's around, so I still think it'll be worth playing that card. It's also just good going first in general against a lot of decks. And the last cards, so I played 3 Summon Limit and 3 Get Out. So Get Out is a card that Team Samurai told me about to play against Salad. When I mentioned that, like, at Niagara we were talking, I said that I've been losing to Salad a lot, and this card just breaks the entire board or forces the roar or whatever. A lot of times they roar like one of your regular plays though, so I like this card a lot. It's pretty good against Orcus going second as well. I wasn't siding it in against like the regular Orcus decks, but maybe if I play like some random variant. It's just a good card in general. Pendulums get more popular now that the banlist happens, and these cards could actually get even better going forward, so we'll have to wait and see if I'm going to still play this card. I didn't actually play against St. Salad this event though. The first event that I like directly put in cards to play against Salad, I don't actually play against it, which is pretty sad, but we'll have to see what happens. But I like this card a lot just in theory, and it was good in testing, so I would probably play it again if I could go back. And 3 Summon Limit, I didn't like Rivalry because it's really weak against like the more pure versions of Orcus, or even the Cyber Dragon Orcus variant. Pretty good against Lunar Lights though, but I felt like I just wanted like something going first, because all these cards pretty much, I mean, you can play these cards, like you can play Lancey going first, and obviously Village is good going first, but you just, when you go against Striker with this deck, you side for going second because you just want to draw a 6 card, because their board isn't very scary turn 1 for this deck at least. But I felt like I just wanted like something for going first against the combo decks. None of the cards like covered all the bases. Like Inspector Warder wasn't that great against Cyber Orcus, and a lot of times like the Lunar Light deck could just break it pretty easily. So I just wanted something that like, for sure stopped everything that they were going to do, and Summon Limit seemed to be that card. It was pretty good. I didn't really draw it that much. I actually didn't really get to go first against a lot of combo decks. Usually was able to go second and then just win, or they would just like 2-0 me, rest in peace, whatever. Anyway though, that's going to be it for my profile, this Altergeists Endgame list. I don't know what's going to happen to Altergeists going forward. I don't know if I'm going to play Altergeists going forward. I've had a lot of fun with them, but also some not so much fun with them in this format. You still will just lose games, or you just draw like unplayable, which is really disappointing. Like you can, if you guys watch like the live stream that I did with John Moore and Farfa, you might have seen that like I drew like an insane hand going first, where it's like I think it had like double judgment and had warning and extravagance, but I lost the die roll, so like I just can't break his board, never draw a monster card, and it's like it's pretty crazy. Like the second game I drew like 15 cards, never drew a monster card besides Silk, so it's like a lot of times this deck you will just draw hands that are completely unplayable regardless of like how good you build it, because there's only so many Altergeist cards. But we'll have to wait and see. Maybe I'll put Sangan back in or something. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I can't wait for new format. But I still want to update you guys on this list just in case anyone was curious about it. And there are still technically regionals this weekend, so you're playing Altergeist, trying to get that invite. I highly recommend this list. I had a lot of fun with it. But anyway, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.